been talking about this book called I Will by Rainer. It's a great little book. It's about 9 attitudes about the church that is outwardly focused, right? And we were in chapter 1 yesterday talking about unity. Unity in the church, unity in the business meetings, and you got to have unity. You got to have unity in your business. It don't matter where. If you don't have unity in Christ, then you won't be able to go in any particular right direction, right? So we're in chapter 2, and chapter 2, I'm about to turn to it here, I hope. Chapter 2, I will worship with others. That's right. It talks about corporate worship. Let me read to you what Acts 2, 46 to 47 says. Every day they devoted themselves to meeting together in the temple complex and broke bread from house to house. And they ate their food with a joyful and humble attitude, pleasing God and having favor with all the people. And every day the Lord added to those who were being saved. So, that's what I call, the book says here, that's what's going, church is all about, right? They devoted themselves, they practiced, they gathered together. It wasn't a legalistic thing, and it was joyful. So, it talks about this guy that goes on vacation, and he goes with a friend of his who's also a church member, but his friend goes to church while he's on vacation. It wasn't just a thing you do at home. It's a mindset devoted, no matter where you are, to corporate worship. So, we got to move from begrudging participation to joyous commitment to going to church. And that means going to church for Wednesday nights, going to church for helping with cleaning up the church, getting together and worshiping when you clean the church, or Wednesday night service, Sunday night service, business meetings. So worship of God, it's got to manifest in corporate worship after Jesus ascended. It says here on page 29, it's a priority of God. It should certainly be a priority of ours. When Paul wrote the letter to Philemon, he spoke of the church that meets at your home. And plus this Bible verse I just read talks about meeting at home. So, we got to shift from preference-driven churches to churches where it's self-sacrificing church. We can't be focused on self-serving attitudes when going to church. This book covers a bunch of stuff like the music style. I'm not accustomed of hearing it. If they don't change things, I'm leaving the church. Music style, I don't like the pastors preaching. Have you ever said that in church? You don't like the pastors preaching? And you certainly should expect your pastor to preach from the word, right? And I've noticed that people, when you preach the word, there's two types of people. There's that person that's not really spiritually focused or self-sacrificing. They're the ones that say, I believe that guy's talking about me. I believe the preacher's talking about me. He's in my business. And then you got the spiritually focused person that says, God's speaking to me. I need to look at this, right? So there's different preferences on how we look at our pastor and how he preaches. The preference-driven church members have different agendas. They want the sermon to be their preferred length. They want their pastor to emulate the latest, most popular podcast preacher. That's on page 31 here. What about I'm not comfortable in worship service? Someone's sitting in my seat. Someone's sitting in my pew. The cushions on the chairs are not comfortable. I don't like the times of service. The music's too loud. It goes on. We have to sit too close. So it goes on. So what can we do to make certain we're truly committed to corporate worship? Well, we can attend worship service no matter what. We can, instead of making football games or vacations a priority, soccer games, we can make corporate worship a priority. And I've said before, we all have this spiritual gift that God causes us, that God expects us to use to glorify the church, to glorify Him, to draw us together, to do supernatural stuff. And if you don't go to church, you're not involved in corporate worship, you're not involved with other believers, you probably don't know what your gift is. So, I will attend worship service. That's a good attitude. I will pray before I attend worship service. There's another good attitude to have. I will pray as I enter the worship service center or sanctuary. Here's another good one. I will pray that I will be a worshiper instead of a judge. So the corporate worship revolution, it goes on to say, it's both sad and amazing reality. Many of our congregations consider church membership to be good standing if they only attend twice a month or once a month or hardly ever. That's on page 31 of this book. So, points to ponder, reflect on the declining commitment to attend worship services over the past few decades. Another one, what are some actions you and others can imitate immediately to have a greater commitment to corporate worship? So, that's chapter 2, talking about the commitment to corporate worship, to come together and worship God, learn who God is, go to a Bible study, don't miss Sunday school. That's how you connect with those in your church, through a small group study. And then have a program in your church where you got people working to make Him known amongst your community. So God bless you guys. I hope you're reading this book. It's called I Will by Rainer.